Hello world. Um, I'm new to social media. I haven't really had one since I was 19, and there's many reasons for that, and I'll get into that down the road. But essentially, what I wanted to make this video for was to kind of explain why I do this in the channel, and my main reason for starting this channel. Um, is to spread awareness for Second Amendment rights. Uh, I myself was the victim of a robbery when I was only 19 years old. I was shot 4 times with a rifle. Um, there was multiple assailants working together, you know, in a team, which call it, because that was just kind of the things that they were doing at that time until I helped put an end to it. But and I feel like since we're in such polarizing times that this kind of stuff needs to be spoke about. Oftentimes we are always trying to disfocus ourselves on things that are irrelevant. A lot of people don't like having deep, serious conversations about stuff anymore. Um, I find that, you know, you can't talk about politics. We got presidential assassination attempts happening here in America. Whether you're for or against Trump doesn't really matter. I'm not, you know, for the person, but I'm also not for the establishment at B either. So I feel like we need to have. I would like to see someone like a Robert Kennedy get elected, um, just because I feel like we need a new way of thinking in office. Um, but that's not what this channel is going to be about. It's not so much about politics. I mean, I do want people to understand why we need to have the Second Amendment rights, understand why we need to advocate for looser gun control, and not in the sense of like, just give criminals guns and this and the third. I don't believe in that stuff. I feel like we need to start changing the narrative though. Like for one, cannabis, that's something that is less harmful than alcohol and tobacco, and has only been made illegal to profit off of the backs of people, for a plethora of reasons, slave labor, this, that, and the third. But my robbery, which called that, took place over a inconsequential amount of weed, 4 ounces, 4. And if you ever have smoked, sold, worked in the cannabis industry on the illicit or the legal side, that's not anything really. You know what I mean? At the very max, in like, in the most illegal state, you could only get, anywhere between $1,200 and $2,400 out of that amount. So people are out here killing each other for used Camrys, like '03 Camrys. I had a car that was worth $1,500. It was an '03 Camry. And that's how much a life is worth to this generation that we're killing each other for. I was shot for that amount. You know what I'm trying to say? My buddy Gabby was shot in the spine. I was shot in both my legs. And that's, how we're valuing life in this generation. That's another thing that needs to change. I like what Woody Harrelson is doing for changing the narrative around cannabis, the legalization, the push for making it no different from fucking growing tomatoes in your backyard, the decriminalization, which all these things need to happen eventually because they've just been profiting off of people for too long. I mean, for Christ's sake, they're locking people up for smoking the shit, They're locking people up for selling this shit. They're locking people up for shooting each other over this shit. And it's just like, if it didn't have any monetary value, I wouldn't have been shot over it. You know what I'm trying to say? If this had no monetary value, I would not have been shot over. My friend had not been shot over. My ex-girlfriend would not have been shot at. Thankfully, she was not hit. Um, and the dude who I shot, he wouldn't have gotten hurt. And the dude who went to prison for what they did, he wouldn't have wasted damn near a decade of his life over something that's now mostly legal in every state. Think about that. So that's just a little about what this channel is going to be about. My family and I, we come from a generation where you're not supposed to talk about these things. And I didn't openly for a long time. Years, in fact. I'm 26 now. This all happened when I was 19, right before I turned 20. You know, what you call it. And I'm not saying that people should be, like, you know, incriminating themselves or anything, which call it, but we need to change the narrative behind certain things, and the only way we're going to do that is if people from certain backgrounds step forward and say, hey, you know, which call it, this isn't really that bad of a thing. We need to stop locking people up over it. You know what I mean? Like, cannabis really, I mean, out of every drug and substance I've ever been around, this is the least harmful of them all. The least harmful. And I even compare that to alcohol and tobacco. So, you know, in my opinion, that's something that we need to stop treating people, because it's a medicine. It is. You got soldiers, you got police officers that, you know, that are swearing by it. I mean, for Christ's sake, I had every pill prescribed to me under the sun at one point after I was shot, and I still would use cannabis in conjunction with the meds, because in order to keep all that medication down, you would need to eat a lot, like food, you know. So I was constantly smoking to force that appetite upon myself, and my weight fluctuated. I was real skinny before, and I was like 130, then dropped down to 100 from stress and everything, and then I bumped all the way up to like close to 200. I'm like, you know, I teeter, you know, now, you know, when I'm working out consistently or not. You know, I'm like a good 160 to 180 now. But point is that that's a healthy size. It's a healthy weight, you know, which call it, after, especially after everything I've been through, which call it the recovery time on that was each surge. So I had 4 surgeries. The first 2 happened within like this, like a 48, 72 hour period. There was the stabilization surgery where they basically put Humpty Dumpty back together again. And then there was the reconstruction. Well, they kind of just like stabilized me so I wouldn't just bleed out and die. And then the second surgery was the actual reformation, fixing Humpty Dumpty, being my left leg. And they call it a reconstruction surgery. They put this rod in. You can check out some of my other videos, which call it. But they put an incision right above my kneecap, and they put a rod down my leg, and then they basically like clump my muscle meat around that, and they bridge the gap between my knee and ankle, because essentially everything between that had been destroyed. I got hit 4 times, 2 of which caused fractural damage on my tibia and fibia. It took me, for like in layman's terms, it took me like I'd say about 13 months for my leg to be declared salvageable, meaning that they were going to continue to do things to get me to 100% able again, instead of just amputating and fitting me for a prosthetic, which also was an option for a year. And yeah, so around the year mark, I started walking again, which call it. At first, it happened with a like a medical boot and a cane, and then the cane went away, and then the medical boot went away. But I couldn't walk for very long without the medical boot or cane, or some type of combination of the two, or just one. So that's when the next round of surgeries came. Third one, we needed better surgeons because out in Florida we'd exhausted our options because there's a lot of geriatric doctors out here, but not a very many trauma doctors, and particularly not many trauma doctors that were willing to take someone who had cannabis in their system. I literally had to there's this one doctor that was really good because he actually had worked on my leg during the initial reconstruction, and when I had asked him to do the corrective phase surgery, that he didn't want to do it because he didn't want me to smoke anything. It didn't matter if it was vape, tobacco, cannabis, just he didn't want me to smoke anything. He felt like he was putting his name on my body part, my limb, and my recovery, was gonna dictate his brand, you know what I mean, which caused so to not deteriorate the quality of his brand in his eyes and his that he didn't want to take me on as a patient unless I promised the day I sat down with him for our little meeting, an examination. If I didn't promise him to quit smoking right then and there, he wouldn't take me on as a patient to conduct the corrective surgery. He wouldn't even tell me his hypothesis on how to fix me. Again, another stigma that we need to change because I ended up healing entirely. I can walk, I can run, I can climb, I can swim, everything I was able to do before I can do now. Granted, there's still some discomfort, there's still some limitations, but I'm still fully recovered. Um, and so for the next round of surgeries, the corrective surgery, I ended up having to leave state, and I went to Utah, where I happened to have a family support system, and they had a lot of good doctors out there that were not only within my insurance network, but they also were more experienced with, like, trauma from hunting accidents or skiing accidents, just car accidents, just different things. There's a lot of shootings in Florida, but not every hospital is rated for trauma, like as a trauma center. So we we uprooted, or I did, and I moved out there for several years until I was done with my like next round of surgeries, and I conducted my corrective phase and then my full hardware removal phase. um, I did my third surgery about a year and a half after the initial shooting. And then it took me, like, I'm gonna say like 2 months, 2.5 months to start walking again. After that point, again slowly with the boot and the cane, and then eventually just on my own. Um, and then after that point, I got pretty much good again, but I still had that metal in me, and they wanted to take it out. So I did They thought they were always gonna have to leave something in me, but I ended up healing so well out there that they were able to do a full hardware removal. So there's no more titanium in me whatsoever, no more rod, no more bolts, no more screws, none of it. And gosh, and I want to do a whole nother video just on that because that was fucking interesting. There was like the weight of my. It's like if you ever played baseball growing up and you drop weights on your bat. It was like that when I finally had the metal taken out of me. It was like the weights on your bat being removed. So like my leg felt literally lighter, and as strange as that is to describe, that's how it felt. Um, there's like the nerve sensations of being shot. That's something people always ask me. They're like, what the fuck does that feel like, and it's, if you've ever broken a bone. Well, I mean, it kind of depends on how you get shot. First of all, so I had a graze, I had a flesh wound. The graze hit my left thigh up high, which call it, and then the flesh wound went through my right calf, just a through and through the muscle itself. Um, the excuse me, the grazes, they feel like you get burned by a cigarette. You know what I mean? If you've ever had a cigarette like kind of ashed on you, um, if that's what it feels like. The through and throughs, the flesh wounds, those fucking cause like Charlie horses. Like for me, that's what happened. I had like Charlie horses in my right calf for fucking at least 6 months, and probably a little longer than that. Probably like closer to like a year, but it was really bad the first 6 months. Like it was like almost every night that I would just wake up and this Charlie horse be, just fucking a knot in my leg, the calf. And it was like way worse with the fracture, with like but it's kind of an indescribable pain. It's like the worst. If you've ever broken a bone, which I'd had like hairline fractures, but I never really fully snapped in half a bone before, and till that had happened, and it wasn't my doing, of course. But and there wasn't really any. It was just kind of like gone, like essentially, the meat, like all there really was just mangled meat between the knee and my foot. Thankfully that I didn't get shot in the foot, because there's like 100 something bones in the foot, and that would have been like a way harder recovery, maybe, you know what I mean. Whereas the tibia and fibia, they're rather simple bones. Is crazy that is to say, you know what I mean. They are simpler bones to fix. Um, Less intricate, less, there's more they can do for less intricate bones like that. Um, like if you break stuff in your hands, if you break stuff in your feet, there's not really a whole lot that they can necessarily do always. But if you mess up an arm, if you mess up in your leg somewhere, it's, they're able to help that a lot better. Surprisingly, I learned that through experience. And yeah, so for short, it took me about 13 months to start walking again after the initial shooting, um, in recovery process, and then after the second or the third surgery, it took me about 2 months, and then the final hardware removal, that was interesting. I was able to walk, like, to get back into my home that day, with assistance and everything, of course. Um, but it was like a week, or like 10 days, which call it was surprisingly fast. The doctor had even said that I would experience what they call hyper healing, um throughout the, like, in comparison to what the first phase of my recovery was